He assured us that he'll only talk for a while, and then you can ask questions so that we get as many questions answered as possible before the senator has to leave. He's got another engagement. And once he's ready for questioning, Chad will we'll pick up your questions in a basket, and then Chad will read them to Senator. And if there's any that are kind of alike, he'll skip over them so that we can get most of them answered. And before we get started, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Rosemary, thank you so much. Tina, thank you so much for your leadership. Good evening, everybody.
We're trying to figure out where we're supposed to stay.
I've been looking forward to doing this event for several weeks. I don't look forward to every event, but I was looking forward to this event. And I'll tell you why, is that I've always felt, since our early election in the House, is that Salina County had my back. And you were one of the first ones to help us in the Senate primary. But what I'm really proud of is the victory margin in Salina County in our Senate race in 2020, that we won this county by 60 to 35. 60 for us, 35 for the Democrat candidate. And I credit the Granny Brigade so much for that. And no one would have expected us to win by that big of a margin. 25 points in this day and age is a significant amount. And the only thing that would make sense is that somehow, some way, the Granny Brigade got people out to vote. And that's really what almost every election comes down to, is two things. Who describes the future is consistent with what you believe in, and then who gets out to vote. And that takes me to my first important point I want to make tonight, is that early voting in Salina County starts Monday. Is that right? You don't want to disagree? I hear different dates, but it starts Monday, and you can go to the courthouse and vote early, in person. And I highly recommend it. Everyone's got some business to do downtown at some point in time in the next several weeks, and it's just so easy. You never know on election day, is it going to be storming, we're going to have snow, what other things, problems you'd have at work, but you can go vote early in person starting Monday at the courthouse. And I assume that's the only place you can go early vote, is the courthouse. Okay. The city county building? Okay, not the courthouse. Okay. City county building, I stand corrected. Thank you. Yeah, okay. So anyway, the important thing is that you get out and vote early, in person, however you can get there, make sure you go vote. And that's really, in so many ways, that's what this election is going to come down to. So I'm grateful for all your efforts and your support on my worst days in Washington, D.C. I know that the Granny Brigade has my back. And that's really inspiring to me. It reminds me of who I'm fighting for. I think that we as Republicans so often get hung up on the policy. We've got great policy, but we always got to remember who we're voting or who we're fighting for. And I think we've seen a little bit of a change in who the Republican Party is, their identity is, since a person named Donald Trump entered the stage. I think that we are absolutely now positively the party of hardworking men and women across the country. That we're the party of small businesses. We're the party of Main Street. Wall Street doesn't need my help. They're going to be just fine. But the folks that are struggling out there, I've been from Johnson County to Johnson City, every place in between, and there's a theme out there that folks are concerned about their safety and security. We did a telephone town hall today over the lunch hour with senior citizens. I think 10,000 people on the phone call, and over 60% of senior citizens don't feel safe in their own community. In Kansas. So something's going on there. That should be 90% of us, 99% of us should feel safe in rural America where we live here in Kansas. So that was really, it didn't surprise me it was that high of a number. And of course the other concern people have is the cost of groceries, the cost of gasoline. And the national media is trying to tell you, inflation's over with. But it doesn't feel like that to me. Inflation is cumulatory. It means that, look, since 4 years ago now almost, the cost of just everyday living has went up over 20%. It's costing Kansas $1,000 a month more just for your basic necessities. But you know what's not coming down is the cost of housing, the cost of insurance, and the cost of childcare. Would anybody agree with me that those are not coming down? Or the insurance for homes and health insurance products, that is not slowing down. So I think that those are the policies that I'm concerned about, but most importantly, I want you to know that I'm fighting for hardworking Americans. I'm fighting for that young couple with 2 kids that's trying to decide if they're going to have a third one or not because they're afraid they can't afford one. I'm fighting for senior citizens living Social Security check to Social Security check and everybody in between. That's who I'm fighting for. And I just think it's so important that we, as Republicans, remember not just who we're fighting for, but also why it's important. We have to describe why it's important that for the future of our children and our grandchildren, we think that this country's going in the wrong direction, that my grandchildren aren't going to have the same shot at the American dream that I had. I'm a 5th generation farm kid, a 1st generation college student. My American dream was to go to medical school. And I got to do that, married the woman of my dreams. We had 4 children. We delivered over 5,000 babies in a 25-year career in Great Bend, America. And your caterer is one of the daughters. I delivered her daughter in 1993. Yeah. So, Miss Davis. So, I think it's important that we remember who we're fighting for and why it's important that we share this conservative heart that we all have. And we're going to stay locked in on those issues right there, is fighting for hardworking Americans and fighting for folks that are out there that are trying to make an honest living as well. I'm ready to start questions whenever you all got some, if you want to. I'll jump to those and I can always come back, but I do want to talk about what you want to talk about. Now, before I get the first question, I forgot. We got an election in 3 weeks, all right? The first question should be, how is President Trump doing? How is the Senate race going, right? I think momentum's on our side. If you've ever been to a K-State football game, a KU basketball game, a Chiefs football game, and you feel that momentum switch. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I felt it. I felt it out on the campaign. I felt it out in the streets, and just in constant communication with Team Trump, JD, and then the Senate candidates. Ted Cruz and I visit once a week. I'm going to go down and help him Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday, and then I'll be traveling across the rest of the country with JD, trying to campaign for President Trump and him, as well as Senate candidates. But I think momentum is on our side. I think the presidential race is a toss-up today. And it's still a long time between now and November the 5th, but I feel much better today than I did a couple weeks about it. On the Senate race, definitely that momentum has switched to our side. We've seen steady improvement in the polling in Montana. We're now up by 5 points real consistently in Montana. Montana's a state that President Trump's going to win by 15 or 20 points. There is a sitting incumbent there that is an excellent politician. He's a liar. He says he suddenly got religion and he wants to shut down the border. He suddenly wants to protect your Second Amendment, and he's a friend of Donald Trump. But his voting record is all consistent with Joe Biden's voting record. So anyway, things look very good, a steady improvement to now we're winning by 5 points. That'll give us the Senate majority. So we've already won West Virginia. You give us the Montana seat, that gives us the Senate majority, which is ultimately very, very important. And we can talk more about that later. And then things in Ohio are looking very favorable as well. I'm not going to bet quite as much money that we'll win Ohio, but I would certainly bet a fair amount of money that we're going to win Ohio. Again, a sitting incumbent there. It's a really tough seat. We could go through the other races as well. But I think that the Senate races look much, much better. The House, I think it's a total toss-up. I don't see any way we keep the House unless Donald Trump wins. If Donald Trump wins, again, this rising tide floating all boats, I'm optimistic that we can have a narrow majority in the House. And we can spend the rest of the night breaking those down, but certainly very, very optimistic. Feel like momentum's on our side. Okay, I'm ready for the first one.
All right, Senator, we have a couple of questions about the Farm Bill. Could you give us an update on the Farm Bill? This question says it is outdated, and could you give us possibly the future of the Farm Bill coming up?
Yeah, I so appreciate that, because I'm on the Ag Committee. It's something I worked on 6 years ago with Senator Roberts, and now I'm one of the leaders in the Senate putting together this Farm Bill. And right now we're at a stalemate. And I'll get into that, but I want to just emphasize why a farm bill is important to other people besides just farmers. So 85% of the farm bill goes to food programs, school lunches, senior meals, those lunches that we have, Meals on Wheels, all the nutrition programs out there. 85% of the farm bill is for those nutrition programs. We have tripled those programs. We spent $60 billion a year when I got to the House in 2017 on that farm bill, and now we're spending $180 billion a year on those food programs. So we've tripled them. I'm so grateful that we live in a country where nobody should go to bed hungry, and I'm so grateful that we can help people out. But one of the things that we as Republicans are asking are work requirements or a school requirement. Let's help people get back on their feet. We have 7 million healthy American men working age that are not working in this country right now. 7 million. So let's do what we can get them back to work. On the farmer side of this, what's really important is crop insurance and something called ARC and PLC programs as well. And what the Democrats are offering, despite us giving them the triple amount of money on the food programs, they refuse to help us out anymore with the crop insurance. Just like your home insurances went up, that crop insurances went up through the roof. Why? Because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's policies. We've had a record drop in farm income, net farm income over the last couple of years because the price of fertilizer, the price of fuel, and interest rates are killing American agriculture. So we've had a good deal, I think, on the table. The House has passed something out of committee that I can support, but Debbie Stabenow refuses to give us any leeway on the crop insurance. And what she's proposing for reference prices actually makes wheat and milo worse. And then the conservation programs, additionally, she's wanting to put so many guardrails around them that most Kansas farmers won't qualify for the conservation programs. So we're stuck. I think that after the election, if we have a Republican majority, we'll put the farm back in Farm Bill. Hopefully we'll get it done in this lame duck session. If not, we'll definitely have a better Farm Bill with President Trump than we will under Kamala Harris. And happy to go into that in more detail later as well. So hopefully that we'll get it done this fall during the lame duck session.
Next question is, where do you stand on closing the southern border? And there's been a lot of attention with President Trump saying ship some of the illegal immigrants back. Where do you stand on this and why?
So yes and yes. I don't think I could be any more clear that I think that our open southern border is our number one most immediate threat to the national security of this nation. Number one most immediate threat. This is a much bigger threat than Ukraine is, a bigger threat than what's going on with North Korea, with Israel. China long term is a bigger threat, but the most immediate threat to our national security is the southern border. I wake up every day, think my biggest priority is to keep Americans safe, and then next would be to provide a good, strong economy. So we're losing a Kansas every day to fentanyl poisoning. We're losing 200 to 300 young Americans every day to fentanyl poisoning. That's enough alone to motivate me to do something about it. As far as sending the people back home, remember that President Eisenhower has been the biggest deporter of all time. Over about one summer's time, President Eisenhower deported over 1 million people. I think the challenge, and I'm all for it, I think the challenge is we probably have at least 11 million, maybe 20 million illegal aliens in this country right now. And he's going to have to prioritize who to send back. And I think certainly as people that have been convicted of a crime here, people that have previous criminal records before they come here, there's 13,000 illegal aliens in this country that have been convicted of murder that are roaming around right now. So we start with those folks and get them the heck out of here. This parole program where Joe Biden is still bringing in 1,000 people a day on your American taxpayers' dollars, flying them in on your dollars. Those people aren't being vetted either. I'm just convinced we got to stop the flow first of all, but absolutely we need to go after the deporting the illegal aliens, starting with the criminals.
Are Senate Republicans forming any committees to forward the pro-life agenda?
So we have a pro-life caucus, which I of course have been on, and we continue to look for opportunities to make inroads. Personally, one of my big mantras is fighting back at the FDA with the abortion pill. If you saw some of the testimony and the hearing that we held where I was working on that and questioning some of the people from the CDC and supposed experts coming in, just some of the complications associated with that abortion pill. Women do die from taking it, and they deny that. And they're willing to give it, send it over the counter practically. I mean, they mail it to you, a doctor's not seeing these patients. They have no idea how far along the patients really are. This is a category X drug, which is a drug that I would never give a pregnant patient. So if you give this abortion pill to someone who's really 16 or 18 weeks along, it's probably not going to work, first of all. The further along you get, the less effective this abortion pill is at ending a pregnancy. So it really becomes something that causes birth defects. So I think there's still some one-off pieces to that. I think, again, focusing on the positive is that trying to be focused on what's pro-family. That we are the party that's fighting for young families. And I think the first thing you have to do is make their families safe. And that sometimes deals with fentanyl poisoning and social media issues that are attacking our young children as well. And then a good job and a good economy. Those are the first two stepping stones of being pro-family in my humble estimation as well.
Could you give an update on the Defund Act of 2023?
Someone's going to have to help me out with what that acronym stands for. Abby, what is the Defund Act of 2023? Disengaging entirely from the United States nation's debacle. Act of 2023, or Defund Act. So basically this act, I am familiar with it, it's just not the acronym, is just, again, separating us from the UN. I don't think it'll ever see the light of day. That certainly if Democrats control the majority, this will never see the light of day in committee or on the Senate floor as well. But I can tell you more and more, I'm concerned about what the UN is doing, and probably even worse is the World Health Organization, and how they're in cahoots that are actually funding and organizing this mass migration into our country as well as into other European nations as well. So I think that, it's interesting, we fund all these programs, we fund NATO, but yet they push us around. So the update is, I just don't see it coming through committee. I would support it, I have supported it, but it's just probably not going to go anywhere.
Thank you. This question is very specific. It says, my mom is on hospice care. She is 104 years old and lives at her apartment with our help and care. Is it necessary to keep a supplemental insurance since she will not be hospitalized?
So I'm always hesitant to give that type of specific financial advice, but we have an office here in Salina, and I think if you would call and ask for Abby, who's in the back of the room, she's my Medicare specialist. And I don't know. I really don't know, and maybe my staff could dive down into it, but eventually I think we're going to refer you to somebody that's going to give you better advice than I've got for you. And I'm hesitant to say, I really am.
Just recently, you sent a letter to President Biden where FEMA funds were being redirected to border control. Can you explain that letter a little bit to us?
Right. So, under the mantra of DHS, they took some money from FEMA to help resettle illegal immigrants. It's that simple. Now, they really get down in the weeds and say, well, technically that money wasn't going to go to FEMA projects anyway, and we didn't steal it from the same pot of money. But regardless, it's taking their attention away from their job. One of the biggest challenges I see in Washington, D.C. are different agencies with mission creep. They're supposed to be doing something between X and Y, and all of a sudden they're way out here. Why are we using FEMA dollars to spend on illegal immigrants? It makes no sense to me. So we're pushing back on that as a priority. We want DHS to be focused on securing the border, not making it more and more porous and open.
This is a bill I am not familiar with, but S-799 has been in the Senate Finance Committee since February 2023. This question says, when signed into law, Congress would tell Medicare to cover 100% of chiropractic treatments for Medicare patients. Can you give an update on that?
So right now, I believe that Medicare typically doesn't cover chiropractic treatment. I guess the question is, how are we going to pay for it? Is that a priority? Is that what Medicare should be paying for? Where Medicare is already overcommitted? I certainly understand where they're going with that. But it's interesting to me that about half the chiropractors don't want it because they don't want Medicare in their business. They'd rather just have cash on the barrelhead than deal with all the red tape of Medicare. So I don't see it going anywhere, but I certainly respect the concern. And so far, yeah, anyway, I think it's like everything. We'd like to have Medicare pay 100% of everything, but already Medicare is overextended.
Senator, what can be done to stop foreign companies from buying up Kansas companies and Kansas farmland?
Certainly, we've introduced legislation to make it harder. And what we've suggested is the Secretary of Agriculture be part of CFIUS, which is a committee that evaluates the national security threat to a foreign entity buying anything. In particular, it would give the Secretary of Agriculture to help look into those particular purchases. So certainly a big purchase of farmland right next to McConnell Air Force Base, Fort Riley, Fort Leavenworth is a bigger concern than purchasing 20 acres out in Hayes, America, something like that. So I think that's the first thing we can do. Most states are addressing this themselves, which is where I would prefer where things be addressed. I just think the solution in Kansas is going to be different than the solution in urban America. So Kansas has tightened things up a little bit, but I think that there's more that could be done. I think that we're missing the real concern here, though. I don't think it's just the land. I think it's the whole food chain. So when it comes to pork production, China owns, gosh, I forget the number, maybe a third or at least a fourth of the pork production in the country through Smithfield. Brazilian folks own about 20% of the beef processing as well. So what's way more than just the land is the food chain. And another big concern for me is biosecurity and bioterrorism. You think about how China made this COVID virus with funding from Dr. Fauci. That was really, and those same type of people are working for mass destruction weapons out of viruses that could kill, say, the wheat crop or could kill chickens or whatever it is. So that's been a huge priority for me, is working with the CDC to develop antivirals that would help protect the food security as well. So I think that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to food security and national security. And just overall, I think for my job is to keep the Senate reminded that food security is national security. We're taken for granted. America is so lucky that we all have an abundance of food that people don't recognize how important it is as a national security issue.
Senator, in your opinion, is there any circumstance where an abortion is acceptable?
So, this is very personal to me. As an obstetrician, I never performed an abortion. I never did find that reason. I think that a lot of people have come down to say that rape and incest and life of the mother are exceptions that most people should agree upon. That's what President Trump and President Reagan has suggested. For me personally, I could never perform an abortion, but I'm willing to tolerate those three exceptions.
It has been voiced in the media that if the Democrats win this election, this could be our last legitimate election. Could you speak to that?
I think the big topic here is election integrity overall. And I want to compliment many states that have improved election integrity. Remember that the Constitution says that states will determine the time, manner, and place. There's only a finite amount of things we can do out of Washington, D.C. But the two things I am pushing for and happy to co-sponsor the bills is, number one, is to require proof of citizenship when you go register to vote. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. When you get a driver's license, I had to have them show, here's my birth certificate. And I think having the opportunity to vote is equally as important. So proof of citizenship when to register, and then an ID when you do vote. I think that we should end unsolicited ballot. When the states like Colorado send out unsolicited ballots to every person registered. I think there's a lot that could be done with going through our voter rolls, that should be a huge priority. I think this is why it's so important who we elect as our county clerks and as our Secretary of State here in Kansas, that they should be constantly purging those ballot rolls out of people that have died, people that have moved, and bringing those up to date. I'm not going to give up on the country, but as long as you know that we have some state control, I think we can keep fighting back. But obviously, Democrats want to open things up, and if they had control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, they could do just the opposite of what I just described. They could try to say, okay, Kansas, you cannot do IDs. You cannot require IDs when you go vote. So there's a lot of things that could backfire as well. So it is a legitimate concern.
Senator, how much is too much when we are funding Ukraine?
Well, I hit my limit after the first round. You know, the first round, you know, I saw this legitimate need. It was a horrible situation. I detest Putin. I was raised during the Cold War, so certainly my feelings are very strong against Putin and Russia as well. But within weeks of that war breaking out, I went to the Poland-Ukraine border, visited with NATO leaders, visited with Ukraine leaders. I was just with Zelensky behind closed doors about a month ago. I was in Europe about 3 months ago, and Europe's not doing what they said they would do. Russia has the economy the size of Italy. You put Europe together, and their economy is the size of ours. This should be Europe's primary problem. Our buy-ins, we have 105,000 American troops in Europe right now, of which my son is one. 105,000 American troops. I have no idea how many jets, how many tanks, nor does the military know how many we have over there. But I think we've shown our commitment. We need to shift some of those resources. Number one is to the border. So I very clearly have stated multiple times, I will not vote for any more funding for Ukraine until we secure our border. I think I'm going to add to that until we take care of our hurricane victims as well now. And number two is we need to shift those financial resources to the South Sea. I mentioned earlier China is the bigger long-term threat to this country. Just like your jobs, your family, you have to make priorities over your own budget. I think the federal government has to make some priorities and tough choices as well. Yes, I admire Ukraine. Yes, I'm supportive of them. But my priority is America first. So I think we need to prioritize securing our border, figuring out what we're going to do in the South Sea, and then we've done plenty already for Ukraine. Just our military being there right now, and us footing the bill for that is plenty. It's time for Europe to step up and take the lead in that situation.
If I could build on that, what are your thoughts on supporting Israel in the war that they are in right now?
Yeah. America needs to unequivocally support Israel without hesitation. That the world needs to know that they are one of our greatest allies and that we stand with them unconditionally. The world needs to know that Israel not only should but must retaliate against Iran. That there needs to be a significant response to this last round of 180 missiles. But it's so frustrating here when you think about national security, just in general. Remember, Barack Obama said, don't underestimate Joe Biden's ability to mess things up when it comes to national security and world events. And the theme here is we have a weak person in the White House. And because he's so weak, all these other foreign actors, especially a bully like Iran, can take advantage of the situation. I'm very convinced that you have to choose Israel or Iran. There's no really middle road. You have to choose one or the other. That Iran chants death to Israel, death to America. Israel is our ally. So we need to stand firmly beside Israel. And I really think if we would stand firmer, that we'll get to peace sooner. It's that simple.
When President Trump is reelected, what thoughts are you entertaining and working with him to make America strong again?
You know, I think it's important, number one, is remember who we're fighting for. So we're staying focused on what can we do to help hardworking men and women, what can we do to help small businesses. And I think that President Trump had a strong footprint on what our national policy should be. Okay, so number one, secure the border. And for my job as a senator is help to fund that, which I've done in the past and I'll do again. Number two is to slash regulations. How's the recipe for getting inflation under control, making a stronger economy? It's slashing regulations, cutting taxes, cutting spending, balance the budget, set American energy free. And while we're at it, let's set American agriculture, American mining, and American manufacturing free. And then lastly is start renegotiating free reciprocal trade agreements. President Trump gave us USMCA, China Phase 1, South Korea, Japan. All of those are working well. Our agriculture trade with Mexico has replaced China as our #1 trade partner, and it's a much more consistent partner. We would love to sell more soybeans and milo to China, but they're just a very inconsistent partner. And it's hard to figure out when you're a farmer in Kansas, shall I grow milo and soybeans this year, or the Chinese just going to stop buying it because of political reasons as well. So I think supporting President Trump in all those basic policies, again, it's slashing regulations. Don't underestimate how much we're drowning in regulations, which is just killing our economy. And then next we need to cut spending, cut taxes, balance the budget, set American energy, manufacturing, mining, and agriculture free, and free trade agreements. We don't need a rocket science plan. We know the recipe, we know the plan. We just need to go execute this simple plan well.
I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. It seems as though there are leaders and politicians who are actively trying to destroy America today. Some are Democrats, some are Republican. What is your plan to fight against that?
I think number one is that the constitutional way of doing that is for elections for people to vote them out. So I certainly can't take responsibility that California is going to send us really liberal senators. That's going to happen. I think this boils down to the best way to fight against that is controlling the majorities. I think if we have a Republican Senate majority with the right majority leader there is step one for us. I have confidence in Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House. He's one of my closest friends. He and his wife Kelly, we came in together, so I have confidence in his leadership skills. I think that it's going to be very important who we select as our Senate majority leader, and working with President Trump, I think that we'll start squelching these people out.
Again, a very specific question. It says, why does when a spouse dies, the one living only get the highest of the Social Security check instead of getting both checks that we both worked for?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer. That's what the policy is and has been. And again, Social Security is overcommitted as well.
Very simply, what is your stance on term limits?
Yes. Really, one of the first things I did in the House and the first things I did in the Senate is co-sponsored bills for term limits. It would solve way more problems than I would have ever guessed. The longer you stay in Washington, the more you're influenced by K Street, and K Street and lobbyists invest in those people that have been there a long time. So the committee chairman is strictly based upon your seniority on that particular committee. So there's just too much influence. It's no different. I was in Rotary District Governor. I'd like that every year we change president. When I first joined Rotary, I said, this is not very efficient. You just get your agenda rolling and then you change. But the good news is not one person controlled that club. Our church, the same thing. Every 2 years we changed leadership in our church. It worked really well. And I think the same principles would apply in federal government. It'd be great to get new blood, new leadership in there, and then go back to your job. I'm not a big fan of professional politicians. I think the Constitution was never meant for people whose only job was to be an elected official. I think it's an honor to get to do this job, but I think you're seeing more and more people that are elected, House and Senate both, are people that come from a real world background.
One of the issues is big government. Can Congress do anything to get rid of all of the extra government workers who have been hired over these last couple of years?
Yeah, well, sure they can. And it's going to take a very strong president. The union, the federal government union, is incredibly powerful. I think that one of the first things you do when you have a company that's upside down is you freeze hiring. So I think that's the first step, is just to freeze federal hiring and not replace those people, and you make their life miserable, and so that they'll quit. But it's going to take, I love President Trump's plan to bring in Elon Musk and clean house. And I think that's exactly what we need to do. That out these?
Getting close. Who keeps approving the funds to Ukraine?
Well, Congress does, right? So Congress does, and like I said, I voted for the first set round of funding, and I voted against the rest of it. But Congress does, including the majority of Republicans.
I'll just read this one straight from the hand. How do you feel about climate change? And do you feel we really have a climate change issue?
So we can argue about this across the world, but I think most importantly, I want to leave this world cleaner, healthier, and safer than I found it. And I think the air in Kansas, the water in Kansas are cleaner today than they were when I was growing up. So let's keep going in that direction. I think that the solution, staying focused on the solution though, for the environmental challenges we have is American innovation, not government mandates. And all across the state, I see incredible things happening to improve our environment. Precision agriculture is for real. We are now growing more with less. We're growing more with less water, with less fertilizer. And then we're coming behind and planting grasslands back along the streams, Mother Nature's way of filtering out some of those herbicides and some of those fertilizers as well. So I think it's a common sense approach to all this. I think energy is a big part of carbon production. I think that nuclear modular reactors is the solution. I'm afraid that wind and solar is not panned out. I wished it had, but it just isn't. It's never going to be affordable and it's never going to be reliable. But I think these nuclear modular reactors will work. In 20 years, maybe even 10 years from now, Salina, Kansas will have a 6-pack of these modular reactors. They're the size of a silo. Each one of them, like the size of a silo. You could put all of them on one football field. They're walk-away safe. And by walk-away safe, I mean is if you walked away, if the water stopped running, the electricity stopped running, that the molten salt bathing the nuclear mass in there is going to solidify and stop the reaction. Probably a 6-pack of those would take care of all of Saline County. Every city, just like some cities have their own diesel generators or their own coal generators, someday in the future we'll all have our nuclear modular reactor. We can take the waste from Wolf Creek to run these. So take the waste from Wolf Creek to run these, and then we take the waste from that and we do things like medical thallium scans and all sorts of uranium isotopes that we can use that we're now buying from Russia as well. So I think part of the environmental solution, what I'm trying to say, is probably not electric cars. I think it's going to be modular reactors taking the place of coal eventually, and then eventually natural gas. It's a 20 to 40 year turnaround. It's not going to be a matter of days or weeks or years, but what's not working are federal mandates. The federal mandates are just driving up the cost of everything. So I think it's real important that we as Republicans embrace that we want to leave this country cleaner, healthier, and safer than we do it, but we're the party of common sense. We're the party of common sense, and that I believe that American innovation is going to solve the problem, not American government. So I think I'll wrap up with this is, in 3 weeks this country has a big choice, a big choice. I think that there's a battle for the heart and soul of this nation, and elections do have consequences. America has to decide, do we want to be a nation that believes in a rule of law, or are we going to be a nation with open borders that defunds the police? When it comes to the economy, are we going to be a nation that rewards hard work and innovation, or are we going to be a nation where the president sets the prices? Are we going to be, and then finally, it's our values. This is what I'm really, really concerned about, is our values. Are we going to be a nation that honors the values that were passed on to us from our parents, our grandparents? My public coaches and teachers were great. They taught me great values. Faith, family, community, hard work. Those are the values that have been passed on from generation to generation across Kansas. And we don't want coastal elites telling us what our values should be. I've yet to meet a person that can look me in the eye and say, I'm perfectly fine with a biological boy competing against my daughter or granddaughter in the state track meet. No one can look you in the eye and tell you that. No one can look you in the eye and say, I'm perfectly fine with a biological boy in my daughter or granddaughter's locker room. That person, I haven't met that person yet. We got the tail wagging the dog. And I hope that America shows up to vote And again, I'll just close on that you can get out and vote early starting Monday. Go not to the courthouse, but the City County building, and take somebody with you. So thanks for your past support. You can count on me that I'm fighting for the Granny Brigade. Thank you.